Ancient architecture, Florida. Let's see what comes up. This article attempts to list the oldest extant buildings surviving in the state of Florida in the United States of America, including the oldest houses in Florida and any other surviving structures. Some dates are approximate and based upon dendrochronology, architectural studies, and historical records. Many sites on the list date to the complex colonial period of Florida's history, from the founding of Spanish St. Augustine in 1565 to American possession through the Adams-Onis Treaty in 1881. So apparently, in North Miami Beach, almost 1,000 years ago, wow, a monastery was built. Actually, it was built in Sacramento in Segovia, Spain, and then dismantled. Oh. They placed it here, and that doesn't count. Castillo de San Marcos, St. Augustine, 1695, oldest masonry fortification in the United States. Oldest wooden schoolhouse, 1702, in St. Augustine. Let's check this out. That's dope. In the 1930s, it was known as the oldest school. It's interesting. The oldest wooden schoolhouse is a wooden structure located at 14 St. George Street in St. Augustine, Florida, near the city gate. It is touted as being the oldest wooden school building in the United States. The exact date of construction is unknown, but it first appears on tax records in 1716. Oh my God. There are no extant wooden buildings in St. Augustine built prior to 1702, when the British burned the city. Wow, of course. In 1702, a whole city was already there that got burned down. The oldest schoolhouse still standing in the United States is the Vorlezers House, built prior to 1696 and located in historic Richmond Town in Staten Island, New York. The building is encircled by a large chain, placed there in 1937 to help anchor it to the ground in case of a hurricane. Not a bad idea, I guess. The walls are made of bald cypress and red cedar, which are held together by wooden pins and iron spikes. However, recent maintenance has replaced the roofing, among other fixes. The schoolmaster and family lived on the second floor, above the classroom, and the kitchen was located in a separate building to reduce heat and threat of fire. The building originally belonged to Juan Ganopoli. The classroom was one of the first in the U.S. to be co-ed, educating both boys and girls. Since 1788. That would have sucked, going to school with only dudes. Well, why go to school? Tours. The school is open to tours every day except Christmas with extended summer hours. The facility features a self-guided tour with an animatronic teacher and student made by the Sally Corp. Given a brief history of the house, there are also numerous items and informational signs posted around the building. Gardens located behind the house feature exhibits on the kitchen, a rebuilt outhouse, an old well, and a sculpture garden displaying busts of famous educators. The statuary was part of a project known as the Grove of Educators, which sought to gather statues of educators from every country in the Americas, though only a few countries participated. Interesting. The Gonzalez Alvarez house in 1723. Let's check it out. Also known as the oldest house, is a historic house museum at 14 St. Francis Street in St. Augustine, Florida, with a construction history dating to about 1723. 300 years old. It is believed to be the oldest surviving house in St. Augustine. It is also an important example. Technically, St. Augustine was burned down by the British before then. So they had older buildings that were, the British, of course, burned down. It is also an important example of St. Augustine's Spanish colonial architectural style, with later modifications by English owners. It was designated a U.S. National Historic Landmark in 1970. The house is now owned by the St. Augustine Historical Society and is open for public tours as part of the oldest house museum complex. Evidence can be seen of the Spanish, British, and American occupations of St. Augustine. Let's see if they got any cool pictures. Looks kind of German. Thanks. Like, what? Is it now in Florida? That's good. Oh, and Florida's in the U.S. Okay. The Gonzalez Alvarez House has been designated a registered National Historic Landmark, 1970. Under the provisions of the Historic Sites Act of August 21st, 1935, the site possesses exceptional value in commemorating or illustrating the history of the United States, U.S. Department of the Interior, National Park Service. For more than 3 centuries, this site has been occupied by St. Augustinians, beginning in about 1650. A succession of thatched wooden structures were their homes. This coquina stone house was built soon after the English burned St. Augustine in 1702. And originally was a 1-story rectangle with 2 rooms. As times changed during the Spanish, British, and American occupations, a wooden 2nd story and off-street porch and other features were added. Preserved by St. Augustine Historical Society since 1918, the house became a registered national landmark in 1970. I wonder if it has a basement. Wow, look at that. That is sweet. Here's the fort, 1742. Very cool. Oh, it's in Florida, which is in America. Fort Matanzas. Super cool. Cannons, right? Wow. Imagine going to bed in a room like that. People just probably hardly slept back then. Mid-18th century house, so 1700s. The Evero House is a historic house located at 41 St. George Street in St. Augustine. The building is locally significant as one of 30 remaining houses within the historic district that predate 1821. It was once the site of a chapel. Today it's the home to St. Photios Greek Orthodox National Shrine. Casa Evero, built 1749, restored 1979. This shrine is dedicated to the memory of the 400 Greeks who arrived in St. Augustine in 1768, took on fresh supplies, then journeyed south to help settle the colony of the New Smyrna, Florida. After 10 difficult years, the survivors of that colony sought refuge in St. Augustine, where they gathered in the Avro House for worship. These pioneers comprised the first permanent settlement of Greeks on this continent. This house is listed in the National Register of Historic Places. Wow, holy shit. Never knew that. Peck House, more houses. It's a lot, wow. The Linsley House. Also known as Horutiner House, who knows, is a historic home in St. Augustine, Florida. Added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1971. Yeah, the architecture here is clearly Pedro Urtine y Puello was the first documented owner of this house, a member of a prominent Spanish family, Don Pedro Benedict, and Don Luis, his brother, I guess, were governors of Florida during the first Spanish period, 1565 to 1763. Wow. It remained in their family until the time of the British occupation, 1763. Through the centuries, many distinguished Spanish, British, and American military, government, and professional leaders have resided here. This home, one of the oldest in St. Augustine, has 12-inch thick exterior and interior walls constructed of coquina, a porous native shellstone. It has survived storms and fires that engulfed the city in earlier years. The house and courtyard wall, built right up to the street, reflect requirements of royal decrees for New World towns issued by the King of Spain in 1573. In the southeast corner of the courtyard wall, in a section of tabby, which is made of whole oyster shells, it is the last known freestanding wall of this type in St. Augustine, dating back to the first Spanish period. Wow. I wonder when this was released. A Guide to Florida's Historic Architecture. It's literally a book. It's pretty cool. All right, so yeah, you guys. We went from wherever we just were into where we are now. I did that in editing, but here we are. I found this book. It's called A Guide to Florida's Historic Architecture. I'll leave a link to it below. I think it's University of Florida website or library. Yeah, University of Florida, George A. Smiley's libraries. So let's check it out. Look at that. In Sarasota, the Ringling House. This guide to Florida's historic architecture was prepared by the Florida Association of the American Institute of Architects and is dedicated to all people who find pleasure and satisfaction in learning more about Florida's architecture and historical heritage. Each county is represented with an architectural history, examples chosen for their historic and architectural significance, and a location map. Each example is identified by a photograph, name, address, and brief description. Only major and easily identifiable features are mentioned. Style nomenclature, for instance, is used only as a means by recognition. Wow, let's see if we can find some cool pictures. They have a lot of blank pages, I've noticed in this. Oh, it must be the back of the page. They literally photocopied everything like that. Wow, look at that. They really do. So let me check out. Well, let's see. Let's see what the area I want to check out is called. Southwest Chapter. At the time of the Civil War, settlement in Southwest Florida was sparse, although this was the area that supplied beef to the armies of Tennessee and Northern Virginia. I do have a book. It's a really cool book called The Land Remembered. And in the book, there was like a diary of a really wealthy cattle farmer, and he had a lot of farms in Florida. I guess Florida was a big area for cattle farming. Don't hold me to it. I'm no expert. Just saying. There were regular cattle drives from the region of what is now Charlotte County to the railhead at Savannah, Georgia. Federal forces determined to stop the cattle drives blockaded Charlotte Harbor and occupied Fort Myers, although Floridians ran the blockade and were able to continue getting supplies to the Confederacy. There were few structures left standing between Fort Myers and Fort Meade by the end of the war. Wow. Who would have known that the war came all the way down here? Oops. Jeez. Oh my God! When Congress passed the Swamp and Overflow Land Act of 1850, it made huge tracts of land available for homesteading, and with Hamilton Diston's purchase of 4 million acres in 1881, Peninsular Florida was open for development. The state offered land grants to railroads to expand their systems, and as a result, Henry B. Plant built a line to Tampa in 1883. And the Florida Southern Railway brought the first train to Punta Gorda in 1886. New towns including Arcadia, Nocatee, Fort Ogden, and Punta Gorda sprang up along the railroad right-of-way, and in 1887, Charlotte County was created from Manatee County, and the town of Punta Gorda was incorporated. Wow. The railroad was extended to Fort Myers in 1904, and the Charlotte Harbor and Northern Railroad was built to Boca Grande in 1907. In 1908, Punta Gorda's favorite citizen, Albert W. Gilchrist, was elected governor of Florida. During the 1920s, imagine being Punta Gorda's favorite citizen, Albert. He must have been a boss. During the 1920s, the Tamiami Trail moved forward dramatically, and with the construction of the Charlotte Harbor Bridge, this major highway was routed through Punta Gorda. 3 major hurricanes in 1921, 26, and 28 left a trail of damage, but did not prepare anyone for the crash of 1929. The land boom had permeated the economy of Charlotte County. Punta Gorda had 3 operating banks during the 1920s. Subdivisions sprang up, and homesite sales skyrocketed. In the 1920s? When the stock market crashed in 1929, prosperity ended abruptly. Interesting. The 1930s brought 2 more hurricanes, freezes, a major fire, and the WPA. Prior to the exodus of young men at the beginning of World War II, many of Charlotte County's fishermen and farmers were happy to work for the federal government's WPA for $1 a day. During the post-World War II period, Punta Gorda and Charlotte County experienced continuous growth and change. Charlotte County grew from 4,000 people in 1940 to 60,000 people in 1980. It is one of the fastest growing areas in the nation. And its citizens, many of whom came as tourists, have the highest median age of any county in the United States. Wow, that's interesting. Let's see what this is. Oops, let's go this way. I guess just a general overview map. Jeez, it's a very sensitive trackpad. Look at that. West Marion Avenue, Punta Gorda. City Hall, built in 1927. It's an example of neoclassical architecture. It's a residence built in 1925. Built in 1928, another neoclassical building. 1914, this house. 1900. 1887, holy shit. With wraparound porches. 1893. Wow. Pretty cool. Oh, they have Bonita on this map. Beautiful. I have driven through Central Florida, and there is all this really beautiful stuff. I guess back then I never really thought about it like the way I do now. The Forey Building, 1928. Collier County. Of all Florida's 67 counties, Collier is perhaps the least known. With the exception of the cities Naples and Immokalee, the communities are widely scattered in sparsely populated pockets located along the coast and on the interior of the county in the area larger than the state of Delaware. I didn't know that. Only the extensive development of Marco Island in recent years has altered the established pattern of growth, which has evolved in the rural and island settlements over the last century. Apparently, home sales were booming here, bro. Up into the Depression. The first serious exploration of the region occurred during the closing years of the Second Seminole War, when combined service units of the U.S. Army and Navy converged on the present-day Collier County in a joint effort to seal off the southern portion of the Florida Peninsula and pursue a more active strategy against the scattered bands of Seminoles still in the Everglades. 4 forts were known to have been built in the area at the time. What? What happened to them? Although Collier County was virtually untouched by the destruction of the Civil War, a number of Confederate blockade runners are known to have been active in this area between 1862 and 1864. An event that is worth noting was the fight of Confederate Secretary of State Judah P. Benjamin along the 10,000 Islands at the conclusion of the war. To elude federal patrols in the Gulf of Mexico, Benjamin skirted the maze of islands by boat in June 1865 and made a landing on Cape Romano to resupply his party with bananas and coconut milk before continuing on to Nassau and eventually to England. Wow, living off of bananas and coconut milk. Modern-day settlement of the county evolved slowly and in isolated pockets. This is blurred out for some reason. Let's see what we got here, though. Wow, look at that. Everglade City, Collier County Courthouse, built in 1926. This is the store in Chokoloskee in 1917. 1920. That's cool. 1920. 3rd Street, Naples, built in 1919. Wow. Didn't say the year for that one. 1873. Wraparound porches. These people had style, I'm telling you. 1927. 1895, 12th Avenue. Marco Inn, 1800s. Ooh, look at that building. Bank of Everglades. The Bank of Everglades in 1926. Okay. Super cool. I'll leave a link below to this book. I'm glad we found it. And I guess I'll cap it on that. I'll have this episode be a brief little intro into some of Florida's historic architecture. We'll continue to, research and see what we find and just learn. I love just perusing, learning all, seeing things that I never knew before that are all around me, Maybe you do too. Comment below if you do, smash the like button, and subscribe. Thank you very much. See you next time.